Well, folks, as you can see, I have someone brand new with me. His name is Glenn Chong, and he was introduced to me by Francis Tansico. And we're going to talk a little bit today on the second take. Something happened with the video earlier. But anyway, moving on, we're going to talk about Smartmatic and the election in the Philippines. And this is a fraud that's been going on, not just in the Philippines, not just in the United States, but all over the world. So Glenn, please explain to us what's been happening with Smartmatic and what happened in the election in 2016. Take it away.
First of all, sir, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to be able to reach a wider audience. And for those of you who are viewing this video, a very good day to all of you. Let me start, sir, with a little bit of background about myself. I was a former member of the Congress of the Philippines. I was a congressman from 2007 to 2010. I won in the manual elections when the manual elections were still in place in the Philippines. Because in the manual elections, the cheating is also manual. And these are capable of perception. You can see them, you can observe them, you can watch them, and you can also stop them. But in an automated election system, which came into force in the Philippines in 2010, you really don't see how your votes are counted. The process of voting, well, of course, the process of voting is transparent. Everybody can see it. But the more critical aspect of the elections, which is the counting of the votes and the canvassing and tallying of the totals of the votes, are all hidden. And that's when the cheating can actually easily come in because it is also automated. So way back when I ran for re-election in my district in 2010, this was the time when Smartmatic, for the first time, handled our elections. Our elections is supposedly only to run for 12 hours, from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. But what happened in my district was that people were allowed to vote from 7 in the morning of May 10 all the way to midday of the next day. That's 12 noon of May 11. So all in all, our election tellers were operating for 29 straight hours. And I could not even believe it that they were allowing people to vote all throughout from 7 o'clock in the evening all the way until the next day, in the middle of the day, of the next day. So after the elections, I lost by only 361 votes. I lost around, I was overtaken by my opponent around 5:45 in the morning of May 11th. That's the next day of the elections. And from then on, I studied the system. We were able to, very fortunate enough, the people actually, I should credit the people in my district because they actually went out to the election officers and forced them to give them certified copies of the audit logs. The audit logs is, as we know, voting systems, voting machines are computerized systems. They have logs, which records all the transactions that or the events that happen within the system. We're able to get that, the logs of the voting machines, plus the logs also of the canvassing system where the results were transmitted. So from there, we were able to cross-match them, and we found out at least eight precincts or voting centers which had very serious anomalies. The first one is that precinct which is denominated 78-05006. That's the precinct number of that machine. The log would show that the machine was unable to transmit any result during that night of the canvassing. It's very clear in the log. It says that the machine says like something like this in layman's terms. I was shut off at 8:29 in the evening, but I was unable to transmit to any of the servers for the canvassing the votes.
Wow.
8:29 in the evening, the machine was shut off. It was packed because it will have to be returned to the municipal hall. However, 2 hours and 44 minutes later, an electronic transmission purportedly for that machine was received in the municipal hall canvassing system. So the question now is, who sent that result? Because it can be clearly established from the voting machine
that the voting machine was unable to transmit to any of the 3 servers. And then it was shut down at 8:29 in the evening, only to find an electronic transmission being recorded in the canvassing system in the municipal hall 2 hours and 44 minutes later. So that is one classic example of hacking, or we call it network intrusion, because somebody else was pretending to be that machine. Now, later on, we found out also 7 other precincts, 7 other voting centers, which transmitted twice. They transmitted twice. But the second transmission, the machines were already switched off. They were already shut down between 1 to 2 hours earlier than the second transmission that was received in the canvassing systems. So what I did was, I was still a congressman at the time, I presented these findings to the House of Representatives. Smartmatic was there, our Commission on Elections was there. They refused to answer. They could not answer me. So over the next 8 years, that is starting from 2011 all the way until now, I have been a regular resource speaker in all Senate hearings. This is now the Senate of the Philippines, the upper house of our legislative branch of government that was conducting the hearings. Over those years, I think we had already over 10 or 12 hearings. And I have been there all the time, or more than that, maybe 20 hearings all in all. I have been there, and I have tried to elicit a confession from COMELEC, or at least an answer. But there was one hearing, sir. There was one hearing. I remember it very well. It was March 23, 2012. We were there in the Senate hearing room, and of course the chairman of the committee refused to call me. He would not call me because I was already angry at the Commission on Elections and I was pointing at them. So then suddenly, the Senate President of the Philippines, the Senate President, came in and attended the hearing, and then he challenged every one of us in the room. Prove to me that someone is sitting in office because of cheating. And because I was never called again, I scribbled a note and I gave it to the page for him to give it to the chairman. And the chairman read the scribbled note aloud, and he said, Mr. Senate President, the former congressman of Biliran, that's my district, Biliran, is taking up your challenge. And so the Senate President looked at me, and in a booming voice, it was some sort of an intimidation on his part, and he said, do you mean I won by cheating? And I was taken aback because I was not accusing him or anybody else. And so I said, you know, Mr. Senate President, you have handled the impeachment proceedings, because at that time we were impeaching the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at that time. But I must be very clear, sir. I must be very clear that I never agreed on the grounds for the impeachment of that Chief Justice. That the Chief Justice at the time was impeached for purely political and harassment, for political reasons and harassment. And I stand by Chief Justice, by that Chief Justice who was impeached, nevertheless, by the Senate. Then I told him, you have handled the impeachment proceedings. I remember that's Chief Justice Corona. May he rest in peace. I salute that man. I have much respect for that man. Now, I told him that you have handled the impeachment proceedings in the most statesmanlike fashion, that even if we will hold our elections right now, you will win handily and you do not need to cheat. And I was addressing the Senate President, and he said, okay, you go ahead, you answer my question. So I had 30 minutes, full 30 minutes to present my evidence. And I detailed them one by one, all our findings over the course of 2 years that I have studied this system of Smartmatic. And then after I was done, then he addressed the Commission on Elections. And he said, you answer that. And then you know what the answer of our Commission on Elections, the one that manages our elections, they said, Your Honor, can we answer that in executive session? You see,
privately.
They don't want to answer publicly. They don't want to answer publicly because they were caught already at that time. So they said, can we answer that in executive session? And so the Senate President said, okay, let's go into executive session. All of you who are not members, go out of the room. Then there was this senator who is also a friend of mine. And he said, Glenn, wait for me outside the room. I will listen for you. Because this is an executive session, and I could not anymore join because my term has already ended. So I waited outside for 30 minutes. And then when the door opened, he was the first one. That senator was the first one to come out. He grabbed my hand and he told me, let's go, let's talk. So when we went inside the elevator, my security, he refused to let any person get inside the elevator. His staff, my security, and everybody else, just the two of us inside the elevator. And he was cursing actually. And he said, you know what their answer was? And he said, this is their answer. The only way to explain your case is fraud. That's what he said. The only way to explain your case is fraud. And armed with that indirect confession, sir, I devoted much of my time catching this Smartmatic cheating machine. So from that time on in 2012, all the way until now, I have been studying their system. I have been studying their background and the way the machines can actually be manipulated. And I am stressing this to a wider English-speaking audience because I know that Smartmatic is trying to enter Malaysia, is trying to enter Indonesia, and even in the United States, they have more than 50,000 machines that are connected or somehow connected to them, either directly owned or indirectly by intellectual property rights. I know that. So since I was a regular fixture in the Senate hearings, I got this invitation on July 31, just last month, July 31, 2018. The new Senate President earlier on March 6 and March 14 delivered two privileged speeches assailing Smartmatic because he was able to get hold of, again, a different set of logs. And the logs will show 459 voting centers were already attempting to transmit results 1 day before the elections.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, that's 1 day before the elections. 459 precincts, equivalent to 220,000 votes. Now, what I did before that, I said I have been researching and I really have to crawl, literally toil and soil myself in order to get evidence. When I saw those excerpts of the logs, I went to another politician who had a pending electoral protest. This is not Bongbong Marcos. The other one, the former chairman of the MMDA, Francis Tolentino. I talked to the lawyers and I told them, you subpoena those logs. Because if there is a legal order by the tribunal, then our Commission on Elections would be forced to give those logs in a legal fashion, in the legal way, in the legal process. So we were able to get those copies of those logs. And then, when I compared those logs that was produced by subpoena, legal process, to the one that was shown by the Senate President, they perfectly matched. It was a perfect match. So then we can now legally establish that there were indeed 459 precincts, canvassing systems, or voting centers that were already attempting to transmit results 1 day before the election. Yes, sir.
It's insane, isn't it?
Machines. Yes, sir. These are Smartmatic machines. And if the American public will have the chance to view this video, then you better beware because Smartmatic is also there in the United States. Now, in that hearing on July 31, 2018, I was armed with my evidence. I was really armed with my evidence. So good enough that the Senate President, again, this time a different Senate President, gave me the opportunity to present everything. So I brought it out in the projector. I showed them, this is the Senate President's excerpts of the logs. This is the logs that we were able to procure by legal process. They perfectly match. Now we can establish 459 precincts were transmitting 1 day before the elections. You know what the answer of the Commission on Elections and Smartmatic? This is their answer. those are final testing. Those are final testing of the machines. When we were testing them, they must have transmitted. That's why they were recorded in the logs. And so I came back with my counter argument, my rebuttal. I showed them a specific example in one town, in one municipality. That is Ragay, Camarines Sur. I told them there are 62 machines here. There are 62 machines in this municipality. In the logs, on May 8, our election, sir, was May 9. May 9, 2016. In the logs, it can be clearly shown and established on May 8, one day before the elections, at 8:40 in the morning, a machine from Ragay was attempting to transmit results to the canvassing system. And so I showed them the 62 precincts all in all. And I told them, if this were final testing and sealing, then we can look at it in the 62 machines that we have found. The audit logs are all here. None of these 62 machines were on May 8. All of them had their testing on May 5. So all the 62 machines in that municipality of Ragay, in that town of Ragay, had their testing on May 5. And then they were switched off, they were sealed, only to be opened on May 9. That's election day. But then, in the logs of the server, on May 8 at 8:40 in the morning, one of those machines was attempting to transmit results. So now you can establish that there is a rogue machine, there is a fake machine, there is a clone machine that is attempting to transmit one day before the elections. Now remember, sir, that I had initially talked about that previous machine in 2010 in my district, the one that was shut down at 8:29 in the evening, only to find out that there was an electronic transmission from that machine 2 hours and 44 minutes later. It's actually the same circumstance, the same possibility that a clone machine was attempting to was transmitting results and pretending to be a machine in that particular voting center. So you see, after I presented this, the Commission on Elections and the Smartmatic representatives, they were there in full force. They could not answer it for for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The room was silent. They could not answer because they were caught off guard. They never expected that we were already armed with a counter argument for their excuses. So the problem with this, sir, is that during that time, when the presentation was made and Smartmatic and the Comelec were already caught red-handed, national TV switched off the live coverage of the hearings. So there was no more coverage of the hearings, and I think the people got angry with that. They got angry because they could understand already what is happening on. They are covering up this problem with our elections in the Philippines using Smartmatic. Now, previously we were talking about Senator Bongbong Marcos. Some of these senators there were trying to pin me down using Senator Bongbong Marcos. They were charging me that I was speaking and presenting this on behalf of Mr. Marcos. But I told them, long before Bongbong Marcos ran in 2016, long before he was cheated, I was already there talking. I was already there presenting evidence before the Senate, before senators and congressmen. I was already there fighting for clean and honest elections. I was already there fighting for the removal of Smartmatic. So you see, I can empathize with Bongbong Marcos because what happened to him is exactly what happened to me 6 years earlier. During the night of the canvassing, this is for the case of the Vice President, sir. During the night of the canvassing, it was found out that a Smartmatic technician by the name of Marlon Garcia, he's a Venezuelan, tweaked the election servers. This is the server that broadcasts the election results to the public. We call it transparency server. There you are. the cheating is so transparent for everyone to see, sir.
Wow.
Yeah, he tweaked the transparency server in the middle of live transmission of results. So you see, the excuse of Smartmatic is this. This is the N, the N with a little on the top. It's a Spanish letter, because we have in the Philippines Osmeña, Napeñas, Sinieres as candidates. What happened was that the election data packet would show, instead of an NA, a question mark. So they tweaked the system without everyone knowing it. But they were discovered because the hash code of the election results packet changed. So that is actually already an indication that somebody tampered with the system. So they were discovered, and you know what the Commission on Elections said? It's just cosmetic change.
Cosmetic.
Cosmetic change. But earlier before that, we were also in contact with Professor Douglas W. Jones. He's an associate professor in the University of Iowa. My friend, a good friend of mine, was in contact with him. He wrote to him about the circumstances of what happened during the night of the elections. And I saw the email of Professor Douglas W. Jones, and he said, that's a bright red flag. When you tweak the system, when it's live and functioning, and then only for cosmetic change, there is no overriding consideration or purpose, that is a bright red flag. So we observed that from that time on, sir, that the server was tweaked. The lead of Bongbong Marcos, which was at its height of 943,045 votes, began sliding down. So in the next 5 updates, of that transparency server, where the tweak was made, Bongbong Marcos lost all those 943,045 votes in just a matter of 5 updates, spanning about 6 hours, more or less 6 hours. So by 3:26 in the evening, Bongbong Marcos lost all his 943,045 votes lead. And that's when the presumptive, I call her presumptive Vice President, Leni Robredo, began climbing up. I actually made a graph of that one, sir, a graph. And the graph looks like a stairs. That's why I call it stairs of cheating, because it's like a stairs going up. So from that time on, I actually continued searching for evidence, and this is about the time that we have actually pinned down Smartmatic and Comelec. So after that hearing on July 31, there was another hearing that was called a week later, August 6. But then, sir, as you can expect, they never called me again. They never called me again. I was invited, but they never called me to speak. I was only called once when the Senate President again intervened. So when he called me up, I was able to present briefly, and then the next time they didn't call me again. The chairman didn't call me again. So what I did, sir, is just before the hearing ended, I stood up, kicked my chair, and walked out. I actually kicked my chair and walked out of disgust, because I was there prepared to present more things against Smartmatic, but then they were playing a script. It was damage control for Smartmatic. That's how powerful they have become in the Philippines. So we're looking forward to another hearing in September, because they're going to call for another hearing this September. And for me, I'll be preparing for another showdown. So far they have promised, the Commission on Elections and Smartmatic have promised to answer every bit of allegations I made, because actually they copied all 10 presentations that I have made. I made 10 separate presentations covering every single topic that affected our election system, the integrity and credibility of our election systems, the integrity and credibility. I made all those 10, they copied them, and I expect them to answer that point by point. And up to now, they have refused to answer.
So that's going to happen next month. You have another hearing next month. Is that what I understood?
Yes, sir. Tentatively, the hearing is scheduled on September 6th. That's about next week. I think next week, yes.
Yeah, it's not
So
very far away.
not very far away, sir. But I would like to add this one. That remember I yes, okay. Remember I talked about that guy who tweaked that transparency server, Marlon Garcia. He was actually charged before our Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice ruled that he should be charged for violation of Republic Act 10175. This is the anti-cybercrime law. For tweaking the system, he is liable to be charged for cybercrime, for violation of the cybercrime law. You know what Smartmatic did? When it was filed before our regional trial court, before the warrant of arrest can be issued, he was reassigned in Panama.
Wow.
That guy. That
Moved him
Smartmatic
to
guy.
another location.
Yes, sir. They throw him to Panama so that he could be out of reach by our Philippine courts, out of the jurisdiction of our courts. Now, I'm given the short time that we have, I want to appeal also to the American public that because Smartmatic has been bragging, actually, Smartmatic has been bragging in its website that for one, President Obama voted in one of their voting machines. And they have about 50,000 of these machines in various parts of the United States. Now, be very careful with this company. Remember, this company was born around the time when Hugo Chavez was the dictator in Venezuela. This was the same Smartmatic that was used in the 2004 recall elections of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. So the history of Smartmatic is actually littered with problems. They have problems in Brazil, in the state of Tabasco in Mexico, even in Nevada, USA, and in Chicago, and the most glaring are really in the Philippines. For 3 elections, they have mangled our democratic elections. They have mangled our right to vote, and that's why I keep fighting them, and I'm even challenging them to a public debate. The Commission on Elections, the Smartmatic, you can debate with me. I will debate with you alone, even alone. I can face you anytime because I know that my allegations are solid proof and they have evidence. And so far, they have refused to accept the challenge, sir.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, the system is very corrupt, and it's not just there in the Philippines. It's not just in Venezuela. And I have a friend that lived in Venezuela and took her and her whole family and moved to Costa Rica to get out of Venezuela. It got so bad.
Yeah, Venezuela is going to be the inflation there is out of control. And by the way, sir, just for to wrap this up, last year there was a referendum in Venezuela. It was a referendum for the extension of the presidential term of Nicolas Maduro. So again, Smartmatic machines were used in that elections in Venezuela last year. This was last year, 2017. So the referendum went on. Then the next day, Nicolas Maduro won. The referendum was approved by the people. The chief executive officer of Smartmatic, that's Antonio Mojica, came out on national TV and repudiated the results of the elections using his own machines. So you see, sir, he said that the elections in Venezuela in 2017 was rigged. How can you say that it's your machines that were used? So therefore, at least at the very least, we can establish that the Smartmatic machines can be rigged at all.
Yes, they can, and it's happening all over. And there's a war for people to reclaim our individual sovereignty, and there's people that don't want that to happen.
Yes,
people
sir.
in high places. Yes, I appreciate you taking the time to explain to everyone what happened there in the Philippines, and I'm sure many people in various parts of the world can relate to the exact things that you're saying. And it's not just Smartmatic. I mean, there's probably other companies that are also as corrupt and involved in the malfeasance to steal people's human rights. So anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and sorry that it's limited. Our 30 minutes is just about up.
Sir, I really thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and to disseminate this information to a wider audience.
Thank you very much, and I look forward
Thank you,
to another conversation in the future, perhaps.
Yes. Just say so. I'll make myself available.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.